I want to welcome in Kevin McGuire of NBCSports.com, who covers college football on a national scale. Kevin, definitely thanks for joining to discuss Big 12 news that came out yesterday. And again, thanks for joining.
Well, Matt, it's first of all my pleasure to come on and talk about this wildly entertaining topic about Big 12 expansion. And I'm sure lots of you guys up there in Connecticut are really looking forward to what's happening right now.
Yeah, so let's get right to it. So major news broke out of Big 12 Media Days yesterday as the conference's board of directors voted unanimously, surprisingly, to proceed evaluating and negotiating with candidates. Were you surprised what Commissioner Bowlesby communicated, given how quiet leadership has been in recent days?
I was surprised because this feels like almost a 180 from where it looked like the Big 12 was really going to be with expansion, which was to just kind of either put it off even longer or really just not even discuss it any further. So to come out and announce that they're going to now open the doors for expansion candidates to start communicating with the Big 12, I think was a little bit of a surprise. But I think, there was part of me that always felt like there was going to be a time when the Big 12 had to expand for whatever reason. It was one of those things where it had been so long that we've been talking about this, where I was at the point where I'm finally going to believe it when I actually see it. And yesterday we saw the first real step forward with that. So I'm starting to believe it a little bit more right now.
Now, based on your contacts and sources that you've been able to talk to since the news broke yesterday, what are you hearing in terms of potential candidates as well as the desired size of a future conference? I know Bowlesby mentioned both 2 and 4 editions were on the table yesterday.
Yeah, and I think 2 and 4 team expansion projects are probably going to be what we're going to be talking about. So to me, I always felt like 2 was probably going to be the more realistic scenario, but 4 is on the table, so that opens us up the door. As far as who the ideal candidates are, well, I mean, we've been discussing a number of the top candidates for this Big 12 expansion plan for a long time now, and the names haven't necessarily changed. The names that I always go back to first are probably BYU, Cincinnati. I throw Houston in there, and Memphis has jumped in there as well. I warmed up a little bit to the UConn idea, though, especially if they were going to be talking about 4 teams. I think that makes chances of UConn finding a way into the Big 12 in whatever fashion. I think it's more likely if they go with a 4-team format. So I think those are the schools that we're going to be talking about. I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. If you want to throw in UCF into the mix as well, we can talk about them all, I think.
Now, conference leaders named 5 factors and criteria they're going to be looking at when evaluating their candidates. First was market, which all of Connecticut brings in a top 20 television market. Fan base, UConn is really the pro sports in the state. Athletics was another, and one of your rivals, CBS Sports, ranked the Huskies 14th best athletic department this past calendar year, despite being in not a Power 5 conference. Also academics, which is a top 20 public institution here at UConn, and then opportunity for growth. I think looking across what UConn's done just as a whole as an athletic department over the last 20 years or so really shows what football can potentially be in a Power 5 conference. As a member of the national media, do you see UConn in the same light as those from this region? And if not, what is the perception of the Huskies on a national scale?
Well, just so everybody knows, I live in the Philadelphia area, so I'm kind of familiar with college football and how it's received on the East Coast and kind of in the Northeast. And I know it's not always the biggest draw that you would see in a state like Alabama or Texas. It's a different world there, and that's not to take away from what UConn has done as a program and as a community. But I think it's something that not a lot of people, I think, are overly enthused about when you're talking about expansion candidates from an outsider point of view. I think there's certainly growth there. We've seen that at UConn, but it's not a name at this point in time that's going to wow many people that are already involved with the Big 12, I think, at least as far as fans are concerned. And I think that's probably the perception that UConn would have to understand is going on right now. So if UConn is going to make a push here, and if they are going to be finding a way into the Big 12, I don't know if they would be welcomed with open arms by the rest of the conference, at least as far as fans are concerned. And I think we've seen that before. Rutgers going to the Big 12. The Big 10. Not necessarily the warmest reception, at least from fans. So I think you could probably be looking at that kind of situation. But again, I mean, if UConn's committed and they can sell the Big 12 on that idea, that's really all that matters.
Yeah. Now I'm talking with Kevin McGuire of NBCSports.com. Another topic that was discussed yesterday, time-wise. Now, Commissioner Bowlesby indicated a final vote and decision could come much sooner than the next scheduled Board of Directors meetings in October. Do you foresee that an announcement potentially comes out prior to the start of this college football season?
I don't know if it'll come out before the start of the season, but I think it would come out earlier in the season. So probably sometime in September, I think it would be fair to expect something to be made. And that's when we've seen some moves and realignment changes announced in the past. So, like I said, I don't know if it'll be done before the start of the season, but I don't anticipate this going on further into the season and into next year. I think at this point right now, the Big 12 is really set on coming together with a final decision, one way or the other, whether it's 0 teams, 2 teams, or 4 teams. I think they want to get this done because they're looking at the long-term future. They want to set up the model that's going to be used for years to come as far as media rights is concerned, potentially starting up a network. They want to get the ball rolling on a lot of this stuff. So I don't think it's going to drag on for too much longer than that.
Now, I saw some rumors this morning that there could be an appetite for football-only editions. I know Andy Katz noted that at ESPN earlier today. Do you see an appetite for the Big 12 to maybe help mitigate any geographical issues that may arise should a school be added that isn't close to Big 12 territory?
I do, and I actually think that may actually be something that's more likely to lead a team like UConn or even BYU into the conference, because you're bringing in the football programs, which is great. The travel expenses for football isn't all that great of a concern when you're talking about the Big 12 overall, but it reduces the impact that you take on your non-football sports, which don't exactly have the same kind of funds, from team to team, from school to school. So I think that's a very realistic opportunity and scenario that we're going to be talking about. I don't know if it's necessarily the ideal situation for the Big 12. I think they would like to have full membership candidates come in to the table, but it all depends, I think, in part, how much a school is willing to sell themselves to be able to get a spot in the Big 12. If they say that they can handle the expenses and they can convince the rest of the conference that the expenses to get up to their campus is going to be minimal, that's something that they need to work on. But I don't know if that's going to be something that a lot of schools are going to agree with.
And then final question for Kevin McGuire. Given what we know today, what do you predict the future Big 12 will look like maybe in a year or two down the line?
It's an excellent question, and I've been trying to figure that out. I'm trying to go through and figure out if the Big 12 is going to expand. First of all, how many teams do they go with, and which 2 teams are they going to be? I think at the end of the day, we may actually be talking about a 4-team expansion, because they want to kind of keep up with what the Big 10 has, but the SEC, the ACC, they'll have 14 teams. So I think the Big 12 is going to try and reach for that membership number to increase the team number. So I think we're talking about 14 teams, and if we're talking about 14, who are the teams they're going to be adding? The 2 that I think would have the best chance of getting in are probably Cincinnati and either BYU or Memphis. I'm not sure which way to go with that, but I think that those would be 2 of the first 3 to get the call, and I definitely assume that they would accept those invites as soon as they got in there. And then the 4th one's kind of up for grabs. I think, like I mentioned, UCF I still think is a possibility to keep an eye on. Houston, I think, is an ideal candidate in many respects, but without the TV market addition, I don't think the Big 12 adds much by getting Houston. So I think that's something that Houston has against them that they don't have any control of. So I actually think that they may get left out.
All right, I appreciate the discussion on the Big 12 today. Before you go, maybe give the listeners an opportunity of where they can find you online as well as on the airwaves.
Yeah, well, the best place to do that is just follow me on Twitter at KevinOnCSB. I may not always say something that you like, but I always enjoy the conversation. I really enjoy the passion that a lot of fans bring when they disagree with something. So I definitely welcome the conversation. So at KevinOnCSB. I also have a blog at no2minutewarning.com, a podcast that I'm trying to make a little bit more regularly updated. So if you want to check that out, definitely encourage you to do that as well. And of course, NBCSports.com, college football talk.
All right, Kevin, definitely appreciate the time today, and maybe we'll touch base if breaking news comes in the next week or up to a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out anytime.